Hey everyone, and thank you for listening to the Saving Your Future podcast, the podcast based on my book, Saving Your Future, a step-by-step guide to wealth development. Here we are in episode 21, and I was reflecting earlier today about the last 20 episodes, and over the last couple months, I'm pretty satisfied, and I want to thank everybody for listening. I've looked at the statistics, and it looks like every single month we've increased listenership, so if you've been here the whole time, thanks so much for doing that. If you're new, go back and take a look at some of the other episodes that I've done. The last one in particular was interesting. It was around Halloween, and I had an interview with Chuck Jaffe, and it was basically his Halloween finance experiment with kids. So an experiment in saving money. So you may want to go back and take a listen to that one. And today we're going to talk about how saving is actually costing you money. So let's talk about this a little bit here. Saving money can cost you money. How does that make any sense? Well, I remember when I was in college, one of my professors used to say, inflation is the silent killer. And it makes total sense when you really think about it. So we'll delve into that a little bit, but stay with me on this because I think it's something that you'll definitely, take something away from. So think about it this way. I like to use the pencil example. Let's say today you can buy a pencil for $1, but you don't really need the pencil today. So you say, well, why don't I just take that $1 and put it in a bank account and I'll buy the pencil in a year from now. So you put your money in a bank account that yields 1%. At the end of that year, that $1 is now $1.01. Problem is, the pencil is now $1.03. So you're thinking you made money by getting interest on that $1, but in fact, you lost 2 cents worth of buying power. And that's what inflation does to you. So you have to always consider whenever you're putting your money into a financial vehicle or into some kind of savings plan, that the money that you're putting away is at risk of losing value. And that's what inflation will do to you. The $1 that we originally had was worth $1.01, and the product that we can buy with $1 can now not buy the same product that it could before. We can't buy that pencil without additional funds. So we definitely want to consider how can we make our money greater than what inflation is going to be. Otherwise, we're not making money at all. So if inflation's 3%, I need to make 4%, 5%, 6% or more. So make sure that when you're investing your money, if someone tells you, hey, I have an investment and it yields 4%, you're thinking, oh, well, that's good. Well, it depends on when that might be. If we're looking forward a couple of years and let's say inflation's 5% and you're getting 4%, you're in the same pencil situation where you're losing money. Let's go back to the 70s, and I don't remember this personally, but I've heard stories and read about it. And essentially back then, inflation was in the double digits, actually close to 20%. So what people were doing is they would get paid on Friday and they'd run out to the store as soon as they cashed their paycheck, buy all the essentials, buy milk, buy food, buy clothing if they were looking to get it, whatever they were looking to get, they would buy right away because they knew if they held on to it and saved and waited, the money that they had today would not be able to buy what it could buy later on. So just making numbers up, let's say milk was $1 for a gallon. If you waited till it's Friday, you waited till Monday, milk's going to cost $1.03, $1.04. And so you would run out right away to spend your money because you knew that if you didn't spend it now, it'd be worth less. The problem with that is that by everybody spending and spending and spending, that increases inflation. So it was a double-edged sword, so to speak, at that time. Fortunately, we're not in that place. We all want some level of appreciation and some level of inflation that's built in, because if there wasn't inflation, why would you get paid more? And that's for another episode, but someone actually mentioned that there's only 2 reasons for someone to get a raise, and that would be more productivity and inflation. So if things cost more, then we obviously expect to get more in order to be able to cover those expenses. So anytime you're looking at an investment and you recognize that inflation is at a certain level, make sure that your return is going to be higher than that. Oftentimes that means stocks. That might mean bonds. It might mean some kind of investment that will yield you a situation where you're going to be able to return higher than inflation. As I mentioned, you probably want to put a certain amount of money aside in a safe place. And so sometimes you might say, well, I know inflation's 3% and this bank account's only 1%, but I need to put some money in there for the day-to-day expenses. I might not be able to, with a certain allocation of money, I might not be able to take the risk that, well, yeah, the stock market will be higher in a year or 2 years, but I can't take the risk with this particular allotment of money that the $1 that I put in, using my early example, will end up being 90 cents or 95 cents in 1 year if I absolutely have to buy that pencil then. If I can wait a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, then I know somewhere along that line, I will actually end up with more money than I would had I put that money in a bank account. So the bank account should only really be for money that you have to have liquid and you have to have the ability to guarantee the appreciation at a particular point in time. If you can hold that money out for a longer period of time, then by all means, you should definitely not take the risk of putting your money in a vehicle that results in anything less than what inflation would be at that time. And I would say you want to make sure that you're outstripping inflation by a significant amount, because you never know whether inflation increases. So if inflation has historically been 2%, you want to make sure that your investment is 4 or 5 or 6%. In some of my earlier episodes, I talked about different financial vehicles and how to invest in stocks, how to put money away for a rainy day fund. So go back and listen to some of those so you get a sense of how you might actually invest properly and at what types of investments you might actually get into that could potentially return those rates of return that will outstrip inflation. Now, remember, anytime that anybody tells you that a rate of return is guaranteed outside of a bank account, they're lying to you. Can an investment do better than a bank account? Absolutely. And there's a significant number that can do that. But if somebody guarantees you or promises you that, definitely be a little wary of that. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. Tell me what you do. Do you have a significant amount of money in a savings account? Have you experienced an issue, or do you have a story about how you lost money due to inflation? I'd love to hear about that. If you're a financial professional and you'd like to share your knowledge with me, I would love to interview you as well. And by all means, if you think you may benefit from my book, definitely take a look for it on Amazon as well as Google Play and a number of other places. I'll put the links to those in the show notes. Reach out to me. I have my email in the bottom in the show notes as well. I'd love to hear your questions because those will create additional topics as well. And I thank you so much for listening and hope to see you in the next one.